So my point, I suppose, is that if the novel begins with uh, an experience of loss, right? My wife has disappeared, um, and it proceeds by narrating the plot of the quest to bring her, find her, and return her, and threads that through uh, with memory and other details that are designed to provide us with a sense of that love, then what we have got is then one of the things we come away with is a sense of the kind of immature nature of that love. Um, but it's on the page enough, and this would be one of the reasons to take it seriously. It's on the page enough that we can find convincing that Leo is in fact experiencing a loss. When we couple that, however, with the the family feeling, pages 26 and 27, um, what we see is something deeper than that, which is a man who is in pursuit of, a kind of experience of love that he feels he's been robbed of. And with that in mind, I want to look at how the novel ends, beginning on page 226. And here we are in Patagonia, the three of them, Harvey and Rima and Leo. And just before halfway down the page, I open the door, Leo tells us. She abruptly hung up the phone. I saw her eyes well up with tears, and she just said, "You two were gone for so long." And I found that I didn't want to ask her about the dog, and I didn't want to ask her about the academy or the Quantum Fathers or Saul or David or poetry or Proust or anything. I found that I just wanted to tell her that I loved her, this strange thing within me amidst all the other strange things within me, the intrusions from other possible worlds, or simply from the recesses of this one. I had thought I could love only my original Rima, but maybe I was wrong. I felt that within me, these proverbial butterflies, the desire to have her think well of me, the desire to lay myself out beside her, the desire for the world to see her next to me, and so forth, right? And this is followed then on the next page, in the beginning of the next chapter, with, well, you'll see, right? But with it, I want to say a conclusion to the pursuit of the desire for family happiness, the conclusion of the pursuit of family happiness. Draped in her traffic cone orange coat, the simulacrum stood impatiently by the hotel room door, waiting as I finished shaving, as Harvey took down notes in front of the television news. What if we were a family? What if there were a school bus outside? What if I had packed our lunches and she had always to hound us to leave on time? Or a different family altogether, she a charismatic alcoholic losing her beauty, he a painfully shy jazz aesthete, me a hardworking insurance man, or she a no-nonsense nurse and me a philandering musician of little talent and he not existing at all, or me a meteorologist and she a computer programmer and us settled down in Oklahoma with two spoiled children, both of them bad at soccer, both of them good in math. Well, boys, let's go and we'll finally see, the simulacrum said, about this mysterious Monday meeting. So this is an act of imagination, right? Of imaginative speculation, of pretend. But nonetheless, what it manages to do structurally is bring that family together in a present way in Leo's life. He has a page earlier sort of recognized that experience of love that he'd been missing. Again, a kind of infatuation as opposed to an experience of intimacy. But there's a cascade effect that follows. Her eyes well up with tears. I respond with a feeling of love, and this rush of desires. And the next step is to imagine this family intact. Now, the experience of family for Leo has always been imaginary. He's a man of a profound kind of loneliness that is a product we can come to understand. A product of his parents' lives with him, and a man who's bereft of an experience of intimacy. But what he finds here on page 227 is a kind of imaginative speculation as a response to certain stimuli, just as with the picture 200 pages earlier is an experience of family. And this moment also brings Leo's experience of family, right, an imaginative experience again for sure, and therefore ephemeral, but nonetheless, right, occupying the same, having the same status as that family feeling of 200 pages earlier, and it brings it together with our author's experience, that the family that's represented by the meteorologist and the computer programmer settled down in Oklahoma is another description of Rivka Gulchin's family. I can testify to the good in math, but not to the soccer skills. Rivka was in fact a math major at Princeton before turning to literature. Which brings us to the so what happens after, right? What is the sort of extended coda about? In other words, if Leo achieves, independent of its status, the experience that he's been looking for, been pursuing over the course of this novel, then why do we have pages that follow? And I think the answer is has to do with an example I gave you all the night before we started talking about this book, namely that this Rivka Gulchin tells this anecdote about writing as a mother, and the way in which language deceives, right, and is not capable of delivering intact the whole of a complex experience. And in particular, right, although she doesn't use this term, I will, right, in particular, sort of shooting on the nose realism doesn't manage to provide through language that the wholeness of that experience. And so she tells this story about encountering, I believe it's a Chinese folktale about the man who harvested, right, the beans, and one of the beans is talking to him, and he brings it home, right, and eventually, becomes part of the family, and then eventually is gone, right, is taken by a bird or something, I don't remember. And that tale is provides a more emotionally complete experience of motherhood. And the formula here is effectively something like this. An extraordinary tale, an extraordinary plot of extraordinary events becomes a vehicle for the most ordinary and common of experiences, right? Something along those lines. And I want to suggest, this is the part in which we think about this book as in its allegorical operations, that something similar is happening. I described to you Capgras syndrome when we began our conversation, and that Leo seems to be suffering something like that. But I think by the end of the novel, we have at least another way of thinking about it. So I wanted to turn us to page 236. I'm going to read from the second full paragraph. Let's say that I agreed to return, that she agreed to return with me. We arrive. I imagine the apartment will smell musty, and she'll open the windows, and cold blasts will compete with one another through the length of the space. The curtains will billow. The thin dog, who will return her, will retreat to the simulacrum's lap for warmth. An old newspaper will be out on our coffee table, as if still important, something circled in red pen. The bed will not be made. 4 spoons in a glass will be sitting unwashed in the sink, not sure how to behave. I will offer to make tea. The click-clack of the gas stovetop will make a nice contact sound as I set the tea kettle to boil. I don't want tea, she will say, etc. So the imagined return is a return to a perfectly familiar scene, right, even for Leo. And this leads through another sort of cascade of imaginings and realizations to page 239 after the space break. Yes, I will have the feeling that this life I am living with the simulacrum is real. And one morning I'll get out of bed first and set the kettle to boil, and the heat will smell chalky, and the puppy or dog, and I will know the creature's name intimately, will follow my every move in the kitchen, and I will be speaking amiably with this creature, distracted. But then when I look up from those dog eyes, she will have appeared, right, standing under the lintel in her green nighty boxies, etc. And this will be our life, right? This is the way it will go. And the novel concludes, the last 17 or 18 lines on page 140, And then one day she'll stop dyeing her hair, and she'll cut it short, and I'll run out of ways to deceive myself. And though all of this will be painful, it will be like losing her all over again. I will at least know then, again, that I must find her, that I can only ever truly love the original Rima. I won't know what this means for me or for anyone else, for the academy or the fathers of the world. Probably I won't really even be able to care. But for all of that ignorance, still, that image of Svi in my mind, underground, holding that baby, dressed in a way that could make him a foreigner or a hipster or an accident or a transplant from another time, I'll at least know the purpose of the rest of my life. The shadow of perspective looms over that. But what I want to suggest is that losing her all over again, as is described in this case, is a matter of wearing her hair differently. And I want to suggest that at least in this approach to it that recognizes that atmospheric disturbances in allegory, that as having a sort of allegorical function, that this is a case of an extraordinary sequence of events that are designed to illuminate something really quite common, which is in the sort of shifting experience of the beloved over time. That those moments in which one slips a little bit out of focus, or one doesn't quite remember how I got here, or is this really the person that I had that infatuation with all those years ago? That love, right, requires an intimacy, requires us, to use those moments to remind ourselves of, the intactness of this other person, the completeness of this other person, and to pursue an intimacy. But it doesn't mean that those moments don't happen, right? Those moments in which, our relationship to other people shifts, right, a little bit, in which they do something that strikes us as unfamiliar, a little out of character, and it produces a kind of jolt to the system. So, if an allegory is a plot in which the functionaries in the plot, the characters, if you will, serve as a representation of ideas, the working out of some overarching idea, then the idea that we have here is really a sort of, a commonplace one, but it's employing extraordinary events, a narrative of extraordinary events, in order to illuminate this rather ordinary kind of experience. I'm going to trust that makes sense for now. I'll be back in a moment.